zoom here. So, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so now you should be able to see my screen. So this is what you get after you clone the repository. This is kind of the base build for a React app, except I added two files here. So if you want to take a look at the end product, that's the first link that says live demo. It'll take you, I'm gonna
Wait, can you go back to the
the
doc?
the doc.
Google Docs?
Yeah, here.
I-
And this should be posted on Discord in case you don't have that.
Oh, it's on this one.
Yeah, in the meeting resources channel right below announcements, should be there. Let me know if there's issues with accessing that. I can fix that pretty easily. But if you do want to take a look at the final thing, there's one like third thing, Hangman, which we're not going to be implementing. But essentially, what we're going to be creating today is tic-tac-toe and rock, paper, scissors, and then sort of this basic front-end site that's completely front-end, so no back-end involved here, no server. And then you're gonna have tic-tac-toe and rock, paper, scissors. So for tic-tac-toe, it's a simple tic-tac-toe game, right? So you can go ahead and play with yourself there. And I'm gonna make player O win. So then it says player O wins, and then you can reset and play again. Same deal with rock, paper, scissors. Basically a nice looking UI, which we're gonna use something called Tailwind for, which is sort of like a UI library that helps you sort of minimize the amount of CSS, if you've ever heard of that. But just to play with this, right, you chose paper. The computer is gonna pick something random, in this case, scissors, and then it's gonna say computer wins. And same deal, you click reset and you can play again. So that's kind of what the goal is, right? Hangman, we're gonna leave that for a different day. So yeah, sort of just jumping into the code right away. So to give you guys a feel for this structure here, node modules up here. Actually, first, I believe when you guys first clone this, node modules isn't going to show up. So the first thing you should do, I'm going to clear my terminal. So once you run git clone, make sure to cd into that folder. Cd is change directory. That's going to bring you into that folder. So now that you're in here, you're inside the repository that you just cloned, right? Anybody having issues with cloning? Yep.
Wait,
Yeah.
so when you clone in the repository, do you then need to create the React app like in step 4?
So if you're cloning the repository, then you can completely skip this first setup over here. So that's already implemented. That should be good. So anyone else having issues cloning? Are we all good for that? Okay, awesome. So once now you're in here, you should run npm install. I already have everything.
You had a question.
Oh, we had a
You have a
question?
question?
Sorry, yeah.
You know,
The Discord, it should, I believe there's a link in this QR code. Like the forum, one of the questions should ask that. If it doesn't, let me know. Yeah.
sorry, could you really quickly go over how to copy the repository?
Okay, yeah. I'll do it manually. Um, Give me just a sec. I'll make a new folder called like git demo. So once you cd into git demo, I mean, this is just what I made a new folder, just to show you. So you're gonna go ahead, click code, copy the link where it says HTTPS, and then you can type in git clone and then copy paste that link in. If you click enter, that should say all of this. It should say you're good to go. And then I'll go into that folder, and then that should bring you into there. So if I go here, then yeah, everything should show up here as it is in the repository. So that's cloning that one for one into that. I'll delete that because that's not the repository that we're going to be working in. Yep. Okay. All right, so once you're in here, you run npm install. That'll probably take a couple of seconds on yours if you don't already have them installed like I do. And then that should generate this node modules here. That's basically gonna have all the packages sort of all the libraries that we're going to be bringing out. And that's going to be everything inside what this is called package.json. Think of that as like a configuration for your project. So all of these, where it says dependencies, what a dependency basically is like something that you're importing in externally to make your code work out. So in this case, you're going to be importing React, React DOM, React scripts, and then more importantly, Tailwind. Oh, it might be in package lock, right? Yeah, somewhere here, if you scroll through this humongous document, there's going to be something for Tailwind, which is already imported for you guys. So that should be good. And if you're running this from scratch, you could use what they give you over here, npx Tailwind CSS init, and then that should set that up for you. But for now, I'm just going to do that. So once you're in this project, I will run the command npm run start. So if you run this, after running npm install, remember that this will take a couple of seconds, and then it'll open up a new tab with this over here. Yeah.
VS Code to me saying that running scripts is disabled.
Running scripts is disabled. Yeah, I'm using PowerShell, so that might be the issue. Anyone else having issues so far? Yep.
I like did all the VS Code now. I'm not sure how to access
So do you have VS Code installed? Run code and then this space and then dot. That should open up whatever code there is in VS Code. Dot, like period.
Yeah, not
Man, not found. Oh yeah, maybe you do have to like configure that or something. If you have VS Code installed, you can open up VS Code, like click open folder and then look through File Explorer for that. But yeah. Anyone else? Awesome. So your code will go here. That's basically saying your code will go there, right? And where that's coming from is in app.js, which is where sort of like the launching point from your application. So this is like everything that's going to be in your application is going to come out of app.js. And then we're going to also be working on rock, paper, scissors.js and then tic-tac-toe.js. These two are going to be sort of helping us figure out the components for this application. So that's that. So that's going to be the first thing that I'm going to sort of implement here is this sort of page that's going to help us. If I looked in like over here in the final version, this initial page is going to be basically app.js. And we want to make it so that when you click these different buttons, the button highlights with this cool sort of gradient texture. And then you show whatever game that you're supposed to be playing. So if I click on rock, paper, scissors, the component that shows up over here should be rock, paper, scissors, right? And when I click on tic-tac-toe, of course, it should be the same exact deal there, where tic-tac-toe is the component that's being displayed. So that's sort of the idea that I'm going to start off with. So yeah, I'm going to open up a new terminal just in case. Okay, so getting rid of this sort of placeholder here. So the first thing I will do, I'll bring it, is create something called a div. And if how many of you guys know HTML some level? Okay. So div is sort of like a HTML object that's generally used just to sort of wrap around a bunch of others. So in this case, we're going to be using this div over here to encompass the entire app.js HTML structure. So when you create an app for the first time, sometimes people just use HTML, which is sort of just like raw like web structure, right? So it's sort of like you type in like word for word, kind of what you want. Sometimes you can throw in some variables, but it gets a bit tricky. So what React does is sort of inject HTML and JavaScript, so then you can make it more interactive, you can make it more complicated. So you don't really need to bash everything out when you have to do that. And then what CSS is what I mentioned before. That Actually, I'm gonna show you real quick. If I just open up um inspect over here, and you go to sources, this index over here. Actually, I don't know. I don't think it'll show up here. But if I go to Google and then look at sources, there's going to be some HTML form somewhere in here. And then there's also going to be a CSS to help style that, to make it look really nice and colors and formatting and all of that. So instead of writing CSS, I personally think like CSS is the worst thing ever, right? So instead of doing CSS, we're going to use something called Tailwind, which helps us manage that. So kind of what Tailwind does is take generally you write everything down in app.css, have a bunch of code in there. Instead, I'm going to put that straight into one of the properties of this div. So over here, I'll write class name. BG slate 200 H screen hex teal 700. Okay, so what this is basically saying is around this entire piece of code, all of these properties are going to apply. So BG slate 200 is sort of like a background shade. And then H screen means that it's going to be horizontal, I believe. And then text center means everything's going to be centered. And then text teal is going to be the default color for everything that's going to go in here. So then inside here, I'm going to throw in another div. And then here I will have sort of the first piece of text that we're going to throw in here, which is going to be a header. So I'll go header. H1 is for header 1, right? H2, if you want to do like subsections in your page, then you write H2, H3, and so on. But for here, we want like a big header on top of this. If you look at the finished product, it says like choose a game at the very top. So that's what I'm going to throw in here. I'll make a class name for this and call it text 4x1, font bold, and PT4. Tailwind is kind of like something very specific that you have to sort of maybe look into on your own, or look at the documentation and understand that. But essentially, like if you just I guess without knowing anything, you read through this, you would think that this is sort of saying text size. Actually, this should be saying text size. This should be saying that the text is bold. And then this should be, I guess you wouldn't understand what it is at first, but then you could Google that and then figure out what that's supposed to mean, right? Yeah.
You have 4x1.
For where?
Text 4x, you have a text 4x1.
What should it be?
4XL.
Oh, my bad. I cannot read. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so 4XL, and then I'm gonna write choose a game here. And then now when I go back to the page, here, it'll say choose a game just like we have in the other one. So there we go. You have the background shade. It's a slight, like, I guess beige. I don't know. I can't really tell from the screen, but you have a slight shade. You have the title, and then we're good so far, right? So, I guess the tailwind has been a little bit tricky so far in understanding, but does everyone at least understand how the divs are working, how we're structuring that in HTML and then feeding that into React to make it pan out? Is that good? Awesome. So once you have this, that's the first piece that we're going to build. And then the next piece is we're going to actually create the games up here. We're going to write some plain, no HTML, just plain JavaScript, right? Copilot's being really nice to me here, but I'm gonna type it out myself just to go through that. So I'm gonna have current game and then set current game. So how many of you guys know JavaScript, have sort of seen that syntax in the past? Okay, awesome. So about half. So how JavaScript is kind of weird, especially with React, is when you reload a page, you kind of want that information to stick there, right? So you're going to use something called a state variable, which is why I have import useState at the very top. And that's going to be used along with React. And the reason for that is because you want that information to stick. There's a lot of issues with like, as the page is constantly rendering, you want that information to sort of like stay with stay with the user, right? So then you use something called a state. And how you sort of structure that is you're going to have this over here. You're going to have the variable itself, which I'm calling current game. And then you're going to have a function. Kind of weird how you're passing a function into this like array, but you're going to call that set current function. And then that's going to be what we're going to use to the set the current game in the future. Yeah.
Great.
So const, oh yeah, so that's a good question. So in JavaScript, there's three things. There's there's var, and then there's const. So let and var are, for now, they're interchangeable. I think there is like more in-depth things that go along with that. Const means that this variable can no longer change in the future. So we're no longer going to be changing. What this means, it doesn't mean that we're no longer going to be changing current game, but it does mean that sort of this pair, um, this sort of state pair is going to be remaining the same from now on after we set it. So I set current game starts at null, and now I'm going to have another variable const games that's going to keep track of each of our games. So we're going to have tic-tac-toe and rock, paper, scissors. Those are the names of each of ours. And then right below here, what we want is these two buttons to show up. So we want tic-tac-toe and rock, paper, scissors to render there. So what I'm going to do is games.map what did I do? Oh, okay. That's interesting. Okay, I'll rewrite that again. So why are they really they're really giving me everything here? But what you're gonna do is inside games.map in JavaScript, that's basically like a for each loop that you'd find in Python or C++, if you're more familiar with those. So for each game, you're gonna have a function, and then that function is gonna do something for each game, right? So for each game there, I'm going to create a button. And then I'm going to style that button with the class name. So I'll rewrite that myself. All that. Actually, this line is extremely long, like it flows off the page. So real quick, I'm gonna I'm gonna copy that from the complete GitHub here just because I don't want to type out all the styling text. So if you go to app.js here and then grab this one line real quick, that should do that. And then you also want an on-click function. So what happens when I actually click that function? You're going to set that equal to something else. And then you're going to set that equal to a function called setCurrentGame, which is the thing that we established up here. So when you click on that button with the current game, right? So for each of these games, tic-tac-toe and rock, paper, scissors, when you click on that, it's going to show you show you the button with the game name, and when you click on that, it's going to set that to the current game. So if you go to our page, now we have these two, and then when you click on it, it sort of highlights in the gradient texture, and then that shows up. Is everyone good so far? I know it's been kind of tricky.
Can you leave the screen on
This screen?
last name on the.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, if you want to copy that line from the completed, you can go ahead, or yeah. Good. All right. I mean, I'll be continuing coding on this one anyway. So keep that there. So now I'm going to create a function that actually renders the game. So depending on what our game state is, which game are we're playing, that's the current game variable up here. We want to print out a different thing, print out a different component, that's going to render up there. So I will call it const render game, and then have a bunch of if-thens. It's kind of annoying. It kind of keeps giving the answer there. But this is basically the code that you're going to end up with. So tic-tac-toe, if in the case that current game is equal to tic-tac-toe, it's going to render the tic-tac-toe object. And if it's rock, paper, scissors, then it'll render rock, paper, scissors. And just real quick, just to show that this actually works, I'll call this RPS. And then I'll call this tic-tac-toe. So now if I reload the page real quick, oop. Oh, I did miss one thing. Sorry. We actually need to call this render game method, right? Because like if you actually hover on this, it'll say that this is never being used. So we actually want to use that function, not just declare it, right? So one more small thing that we need to throw down here. So after we have all the buttons, we want to throw in another div, and then we want to call render game. And on this div, I'll give it a class name. Oop. And I'll call it my16, which will style that. And then now this will show up. Okay, so now depending on which one you click, you will see a different text show up. So in this case, it's RPS. In this case, it's tic-tac-toe. So now we sort of have the main framework for the page done in app.js. All we need to do, and I say all we need to do, but it's a lot that we need to do, is implement tic-tac-toe and rock, paper, scissors. I'll mainly try to focus on the like React rendering component of it. There's a little bit of logic. I guess just coding raw like tic-tac-toe, making sure all the columns and rows are when the game ends, right? I'll try to sort of go through that really quickly and then mainly focus on how the lines are rendering, how everything shows up in the end there. So just before we go ahead, any issues on app.js or people on Zoom as well, which is, I guess the one guy there isn't here, but yeah. Any questions? Also, I think we have pizza left over if anyone wants seconds. Okay, so, huh? Oh, okay. Who has working code so far? Raise your hand if you got to the point that we are. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you don't have working code, is it because like you're just like I guess watching and doing other work, which is totally fine, of course, or is it because you have issues in running anything? Huh? Issues? Okay, yeah, yeah. I'll come up there. Give me a sec. Oh, this I'll be like Oh, like look for it. And then once you do that, goes out of you guys just create
Oh.
What's up? So for the sake of time, I think what I'm gonna do is I'll go over rock, paper, scissors in detail, and then sort of do like a code review of the tic-tac-toe one, just so we don't go like way over time. Because it's like tic-tac-toe is mainly logic heavy, like half the code is figuring out when the game ends and all of that. So um I think if you can understand how rock, paper, scissors is showing up with all the different buttons and everything, then that's a pretty good grasp of how React and everything works out with the styling and everything like that. So if we're good, everyone got pizza if they want it. Awesome. Okay, so the first thing that I'm gonna do is create another one of these blocks of what we're gonna be returning. And by the way, I probably should have gone over this before, but you see export default rock, paper, scissors here. That's a very important line of code to have if you're doing this by scratch instead of working off the repository. This is basically what's taking whatever is in this file and then sending it outside of the file. So sort of in other, like let's say Python, you don't need to export something to import it, but in JavaScript, especially in React, if you want to import a component from another component, then you need to export that as well to make sure that it's all included. So I didn't want that. Starting off here, I will create a div. I'll give it a class name. And this is the same class. This is the same div as we created in the app.js folder. This is sort of just like making sure that everything's equal, the background shades and everything like that. So all good. And then I'm going to create a header. Give it a size of XL and bold it. And I will call it rock, paper, scissors. So now once I go there, I click on rock, paper, scissors. First thing that shows up is the title of the game. So now once I have this, it gets a bit more tricky. So if you go to the finished product, you click on rock, paper, scissors, you have this over here, and then you have 3 different buttons for each of the possible options, along with an emoji, which shouldn't be it's annoying to add in, but we can do that. And then we can worry about what happens when you actually click on the button in a second. Let's just try to get the buttons up there first, right? So how we're gonna do that is first I'm going to add something at the very top. I'm gonna create an array called options. And I'm going to have a sort of pair in each one of these. So name, rock, and I'll also pair the emoji in there. I don't know all the alt codes to write emojis, so I'm also gonna pull this one off of the repo. And by the way, all of this, you can also follow along in the Google Doc if you're one step ahead or behind or something like that. But essentially, this options array is just to tell us that there's 3 different options. And then we're going to do the same thing as before with like a map from each one of these options. So for each one of these options, I'm going to create a button that says rock and then a rock emoji. So basically the same thing as app.js. So what that means is after this, I will create a div and div and make a button. Oh, sorry. Before we make a button, we need the map, right? So we need to write options dot map. And then write out the option name. Oop. Have a class name. Call that button a button, so it's like a default button. And then I'll have an on-click function, which we're not gonna write out yet, but it's gonna be there for later once we actually want to see what happens when you click the button. So I'll call that handle player choice. So there we go. And now we actually need what goes in the button. So what's going to go in the button is basically the name along with the emoji. So I'll have a string here. Write the name out. Oop. And then the emoji. So yeah. Now when we go here, actually it might error out because we actually haven't written out handle player choice. But when in doubt, just click out of the error, it should work. So yeah, I think we actually need to write out handle player choice before before the buttons actually show up. So first we need to do that. But before we do that, we need a couple more things to do with the game. And those are sort of the game states, whether the game is over or whether what the player move is or what the computer move is and all of that. So up here at the very top, above this return statement, I'm gonna have const player choice, and then have that. I'm gonna go ahead and type in what Copilot tells us to do, and then write this out. So that should all be good. And these are basically just to tell us where the game is, like, are we done yet? Are we like what the player moved and etc. So now once we have this, we actually need to handle what const handle player choice does. And for this one, this is just pure logic. Um, so like this function over here is pure logic. So I'll copy that one over. Um, this entire function should also be in the Google Doc. The instructions literally tell you to copy it over, because there's no React involved here. All you're doing is actually there's one line of React, right? Just to say it's a tie, right? But other than that, all you're doing is comparing rock and paper. Rock beats paper beats rock. Scissors beats paper, and what did I miss? Rock beats scissors, right? And then depending on which one it is, it says you win, you lose, or it says it's a tie. So that's about all this function does. And it's a bunch of yap about all of that, like setting computer choice, setting player choice, etc. So once we have this, um, I'll go to the code, reload this real quick. And then now we can see the buttons now that this is implemented. And clicking on these buttons is probably not going to do anything because we handled the player choice. We implemented that function, but that function isn't in our return yet. So whenever we have something, yeah, whatever we implemented here isn't actually going to show up. So I'm going to create another div down here that says when the game is done, we're gonna have a div that sort of tells us what the end result of the game is. So if the game is done, I'll create a div. Oop. Yeah, that's it. So when the game is done, it's gonna tell you what each player chose. So I'll put a class name on that just to style it. Call this text XL and MB2. It's gonna say you chose um whatever you chose, right? And then the computer chose whatever it chose. And then it needs to print out the result. And once that's done, you need a button to reset. So here, I'll throw a button. I'll style that with the class name of button. And then all on click is going to do is set everything to null, pretty much. Right, so basically just resetting all of our state variables, bringing us back to state one, so nobody knows what anyone's done yet. And then, yeah. And then finally, you should have a button that says reset. Oh, I think I have an extra button there. Yeah. So now when I go to the code, I said resent, reset. That'll tell you, you chose paper, computer chose paper. It's a tie. So yeah, and then you can reset and play again. This time I beat the computer, and so on. So that's everything to do with rock, paper, scissors. Anyone that's following along have issues? For anyone that's not following along, have questions? Yeah.
Step 8 from the top where it says display the results underneath the div containing the button, right? Having trouble understanding which div is the.
Yeah. So this div over here maps all the buttons from options onto like actual buttons. And then right below that, you have sort of this code that says when the game is done, then you print out the results.
Does anyone else need help setting up the React project?
Any other questions on rock, paper, scissors? Awesome. Okay. So that's there. And like I said, I'm gonna just quickly, for the sake of time, pull out tic-tac-toe because this is mainly a bunch of logic about going through all the rows and everything, and I don't want to type all of that out.
Where is the?
GitHub, if you go to the GitHub, like this is the main page. If you click on this box over here, it'll show you the other branch complete. And then over here, you can see, like, click on source, tic-tac-toe, and then copy this. And then bring that over here. So this will all work. I know it works because that the completed branch works. And then just to quickly go over this to make sure that you understand the actual React component, you have these two states over here. That's sort of setting the squares. I believe it's just to draw the grid, right? That I think the first half of this code is basically drawing out the grid to get all of these boxes and make sure that you can click on them and generate something. So then you have each of these squares. And next you have a calculate winner. And this is pure logic. This is basically saying that if you have 3 rows or 3 columns or a diagonal or the other diagonal, all of one X or O, then it's going to basically say that somebody won or somebody lost, right? And then otherwise it just returns null. Basically what that means is if there's no winner yet, you want to return null so then the game can continue going. So then you're going to calculate a winner. And this is basically happening as the code is sort of rendering. So like every half second or millisecond, whenever like something happens within the internals of React that makes the page change, you're going to be recalculating the winner to make sure that nothing has changed yet. Right. So that's sort of what this line is doing. Because we're not using a change state, like a use state for this like winner variable, that's sort of means that it's recalculating it every second. This is technically not the most efficient, but it kind of works for this because it's not super complex anyway, so we're good. So now for the actual React stuff, which I'll go over more into detail. You have first the actual header, which is the same as what we've done before, right? H1, give it a bit of styling through the class name prop, and then write that out. The next thing you have is you're going to render every single one of these squares. So that square variable that we created up here, that's basically storing the value of each square, whether it's empty, it's O, or an X. You're gonna draw that out. And if it has something inside it, then like an X or an O inside it, then you want to write an X or an O emoji, right? So that should be good. And then the last thing is this, sorry, I forgot to mention, but this X is next is basically tracking whose turn it is. So if X is next, then you want to draw an X, otherwise you want to draw an O. And this is something you call ternary. It just basically condenses an if or else into one line, squishing it down so then you can say whose turn it is, and render whatever goes in that square depending on who that is. So that's sort of drawing out the square. This is basically saying that, oh, this is a reset button that sort of shows up down here. Right. So when you click reset, all you want to do is loop through every single one of these squares and then set them as null so that now they're empty. And then that's pretty much everything to do with like drawing out the board. And then of course, as I mentioned before, like this over all of this logic in calculate winners, just looping through drawing lines and a bunch of stuff about that. So I guess I kind of just glossed over tic-tac-toe. So if it doesn't completely make sense, sorry about that. But I guess rock, paper, scissors, if you really understand this, then you would have gotten away with a pretty good understanding of how React works, how Tailwind works, and a little bit of logic, how that flows in JavaScript, especially if you haven't worked in that before. So yeah. We have the room for a while more. So if you guys have any questions or issues just setting up React, like I want to at least hope that everyone here can leave with the React set up on their computer so that they can run npm and all of that. So maybe you can go home, work on a different project or this project or whatever you guys want with React, so you know what you can do with that. So if any of you guys have issues setting up Git or React or the most basic stuff, I'll be here to help you guys. And feel free to take more pizza. I think we have a bunch left, right?
We're done.
We're done? Oh, never mind. I lied.